The year was 1922, the beginning of the decade that would become known as the Roaring Twenties, the beginning of the decade that followed World War I, the beginning of the decade that ended in the Great Depression. It was also the decade of Prohibition. Meadville was prosperous, owing largely to its growing hookless fastener industry. And west of the city, Conneaut Lake stood as a gem of resort retreats. With its grand hotels and amusement park, Conneaut Lake attracted thousands to its shores. Also attracted were men who raced powerful speedboats. One of these men was Harry Snavely. Snavely's craft was Liberty II. Liberty was not a pretty boat. She was tunnel-hulled with only 18 inches of freeboard. She carried a huge 8-cylinder 400-horsepower Liberty aircraft engine. The rudder was in the prow, and its nearly flat bottom made it a forerunner of hydroplane design. Clocked unofficially at 78 miles per hour, Liberty was twice as fast as the winner of the American Gold Cup race of 1922. Liberty, along with 3 other Pittsburgh boats and a craft from Youngstown, were the competitors in the first annual Conneaut Lake Boat Races, Labor Day weekend, 1922. Actually, the races were to have been held the weekend before, during the annual Conneaut Lake Fair, but an unusual series of mishaps, including a sinking, a near sinking, and a case of sabotage to the Liberty, postponed the second day of the races to September 3rd. It was on that day that Harry Snavely hoped to make his record-breaking speed official. But it was not to be. Running a time trial, Liberty's magneto faltered. Passing the tiller to his mechanic, Snavely leaned over to adjust it. The front rudder caught a wake and the top-heavy boat flipped, throwing the 2 men clear, but sinking in minutes. At the time of capsizing, Liberty was estimated to have been traveling at 58 miles an hour. Although she sank within sight of Conneaut Lake Park, 2 years of searching by hard-hatted divers and lead-weighted drag lines failed to recover the boat. Liberty lay in 49 feet of water and 6 feet of glacial silt for 63 years, until divers William Houghton and Brian Simpson raised her to the surface. Final preparations for the raising of the boat were made in the early daylight hours of July 13th, 1985. But Liberty's rescue story really began about 7 years before, when Houghton and Simpson, frequent explorers of the depths of Conneaut Lake, began to hear stories of this powerful speedboat with the revolutionary design. Houghton, a funeral home director, and Simpson, a Pennsylvania State Police officer, one day met an elderly lake resident, Bronson Ludy, at Haida Cooper Bay. They were examining some old bottles they'd brought to the surface. After remarking on the bottles, Ludy asked if they'd ever found the old raceboat that had sunk in the lake many years before. Intrigued, Houghton and Simpson spent 2 winters researching newspaper files, and the next 5 summers searching the lake for Liberty II. The research was difficult enough. The actual search of the lake was worse. Eyewitness accounts, dimmed by time, placed the sinking at either end of the lake and virtually everywhere in between. Finally, using a triangulation method based on eyewitness points of view, plus a computerized sonar scanner, the divers found Liberty II. Assisted by Robert Mast and Richard Myers, 2 other divers who had joined in the search and salvage operation, and by members of the Linesville Volunteer Fire Department, Liberty was raised from her watery resting place on July 13, 1985. News of Liberty's salvage caught the interest of some experts in the fields of naval architecture and aircraft engines, and the experts were amazed at Liberty's condition after more than 6 decades underwater. Her wooden hull was unrotted, her engine unrusted and virtually intact. Her paint markings, including name, hometown, and the initials of the driver, still clearly legible. Retained as restoration consultant of the remarkable craft is Douglas Van Patten of Flint, Michigan. Dean of Nautical Architecture in the United States today, Van Patten is the acknowledged last word on boat restoration. Also contributing expertise is Roy Palmer, a retired engineer from Beckett Aviation in Cleveland, who has become responsible for restoring Liberty's engine. According to Van Patten, the Liberty V8 engine on board Liberty II is itself an historical find. In a letter to legal counsel for the salvagers of the Liberty, Van Patten reported that only a dozen or so Liberty V8 engines were built as prototype power sources for Jenny-type trainer airplanes. But as Van Patten writes, the V8 seems to have been too powerful, too high, and possibly too heavy for the Jenny. Elbridge Palmer, a test pilot of the time, said, "It wants to wind the airplane around the propeller, and I can't see where I'm going." But, adds Van Patten, in many ways it was an ideal engine for racing hydroplanes of the kind and size of Liberty II. How Harry Snavely came to have a limited edition prototype V8 Liberty engine, of which only 15 were built and only one other is now known to exist, is a mystery. Van Patten was just 11 years old when Liberty II sank in Conneaut Lake. He is convinced of the historical importance of the boat's design, its engine, and its V-drive chain box.
In shape and design, it is somewhat different than any that I have seen, although it carries forward a pattern that was used by Garwood in his Miss Americas for a great many years. It's a single-step hydroplane, the engine aft, driving forward to a V-drive transmission, and from there aft to the propeller. There's some deck beams up here that may have to be replaced. They may be broken, hard to say until we get in and take a good hard look at it. But those things are really not difficult to do, and we will use the same materials that were used originally, and the same dimensions, the same shape of everything. And it's possible that maybe 10% of the structure will be new, maybe not even as much as 10% of it, but it'll be authentic and just exactly as the original was.
The raising of Liberty II might have been the fairy tale ending of a 5-year quest, but it became the start of a legal snafu. 7 days after Liberty was salvaged, the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission claimed ownership of the craft as an historic artifact found in state waters. Lacking funds to restore it, they proposed re-sinking the craft and threatened criminal action against the divers. Claims and counterclaims on appropriate methods of restoration were thrown back and forth. Area residents disputed the proposed removal of the boat from its Conneaut Lake home. Attorneys Theodore Watts and Alan Pepicelli represented divers William Houghton and Brian Simpson.
We want to cooperate with the commission. We just don't want them to tell us what to do, basically, because we don't believe that they're correct in their assumptions concerning what the law is.
They've taken the position they don't have $80,000 to put in this boat right now. Apparently, we've been led to believe that they may not think that it's worth putting $80,000 in this boat. But we represent a couple fellows that are willing to take the time and effort. They spend a lot of money already in this. And if they sink this boat, not only is it going to not preserve it, but we're very concerned that we don't know how long it's going to be before the state allocates $80,000 to restore the Liberty. It seems like it's something that this boat goes back down, it's down. It wasn't doing anybody any good at the bottom of the Conneaut Lake.
To satisfy the state and to raise funds to keep Liberty II afloat, A foundation was formed under the auspices of the Crawford County Historical Society. Dennis Watson is its chairman.
The boat ties in very well with the whole concept of what Conneaut Lake is all about. This is not just an isolated boat pulled out of a period. The lake seems to be assuming kind of a turn-of-the-century atmosphere, and Liberty II fits in very well with that. Being in the 20s, everything just seems to kind of fit together. The boat can be of tremendous value to the Conneaut Lake area. I think that's mutually felt by all people involved, that it can have a tremendous impact upon visitors.
The plan is to restore Liberty II to working condition and to run her the 4th of July on Conneaut Lake. To earn her keep, Liberty will be displayed at boat shows and at a small museum to be built at the lake. Liberty II, with her V8 Liberty engine, hydroplane hull, and V-drive chain box, was a boat of breakthrough design. She ventured new horizons, dared new speed barriers, set new standards. For 63 years, she lay waiting the day when the technology was there for her to run again. That day is here.